Welcome to Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda. We're going through the Old Testament and we're seeing how Jesus is on every page of every book. And we've been looking at the book of Joshua. And there's a wonderful incident in the book of Joshua whenever the Israelites captured Jericho. And when they captured Jericho, there was an incident occurred there with a prostitute called Rahab. And basically, Joshua sent spies into Jericho to spy out the city, to look for weaknesses in its defenses, to find out how to capture the city. And one of the things I really love about this is God knew that it was not necessary to send these spies, because God already had a plan for capturing Jericho. And that plan had nothing to do with any weaknesses in its defenses. The plan, of course, was that they would march around the city, they would blow trumpets, they would shout, and the power of the Lord would tear the walls down. And that wasn't something, God didn't change his mind. That wasn't a plan B. God always knew that that was how they were going to conquer Jericho. So why did God allow Joshua to send spies, these brave men? I mean, you know what? This is a really risky thing. These guys could easily have been caught by the Jericho authorities, and if so, they would not only have been killed, they would have been tortured and suffered death in the cruelest ways imaginable. Why would God allow these brave men to run this risk as going as spies when it wasn't even necessary to capture the city? And the reason is because God had heard the heart cry of this poor woman in a life of degradation and sin. The Canaanites were a wicked people, and Rahab, as a prostitute in Jericho, was near the bottom of the pile of a people that were already degraded and wicked. And yet God heard her cry. I don't know how that happened. It may just have been that one day, and looking at the mess that was her life, she just cried out and said, if there's anybody up there, please help me. But God heard her cry, and God allowed these spies to come, and she sheltered them in her house. And when they were leaving, she said, please, when you capture this city, will you make sure that me and my family are spared? And they said, we will. But what you have to do is you have to put a scarlet cord or a scarlet ribbon in the window of your house. And when we see that scarlet ribbon, we will tell our soldiers that the family that lives in that house with the scarlet ribbon in the window, they are to be spared, and they are not to be killed in the conquest of the city. And that is exactly what happened. And Rahab ended up becoming part of the nation of Israel. In fact, despite her less than stellar pedigree from which she came from as a Canaanite prostitute, she actually ended up being an ancestor of Jesus Christ. And that scarlet cord, that was the equivalent of the blood of the Passover lamb. That in Egypt, the blood over the doorpost meant that the angel of death passed over the houses of the Israelites. And now in Jericho, the scarlet cord at the window caused death to pass by this house amidst all the bloodshed that took place that day. And that scarlet cord also speaks to me of something else, because the reason why we're doing this series of studies is that all through the Old Testament, from Genesis right all the way through to the end of Malachi, there's a scarlet cord that runs through the Old Testament. That scarlet cord is made up in literally thousands of references and prophecies and foreshadowings of the death of Jesus Christ and the shedding of his blood upon the cross. There's a scarlet thread that runs through the Old Testament from beginning to end. But you won't see it unless you're looking for it. There are people who read the Old Testament and never see Jesus in it. But he's there. He's all over it. But you have to be looking for it. The Canaanites would have looked up at Rahab's house and, she's got a scarlet ribbon. Maybe they thought it was something like a red light kind of thing for a prostitute. She's got a scarlet ribbon in her window. But for the Israelite soldiers who were looking for it, they knew that this was the mark of salvation for that household. And in the same way, if you're not looking for it, you might read the Old Testament, not even realize all that it's saying about Jesus. But when you realize that Jesus is at the center of the Old Testament, then you can find him on nearly every page. God bless you today. May that Jesus, may his blood also be the guiding light for your life as well, because his salvation is for you and his banner over us is love. God bless you in Jesus' name. Join us again tomorrow for another Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda.